May 12, 2026. Australia scraps the tax breaks that built its housing market. By then, Sydney prices were already falling at 12% a year, and Melbourne was close behind. And a basic 3-bedroom house, an hour from the city, still costs $1.75 million. On a normal salary, a nurse would need 50 years to buy it.
Well, it's official. The Australian housing market has entered a downturn.
So last year, 104,000 people packed up and walked out of Sydney alone. Here is how it unfolded. For decades, Australia has been the country the rest of the world lines up outside of. Sun, beaches, koalas, and an economy so unstoppable that people literally nicknamed it the lucky country. It's a golden door. Millions of people spend years trying to get through it, picturing the moment they finally walk in. So here's something strange. While the whole world is still queuing at that golden door trying to get in, a growing number of Australians are quietly walking back out of it. In 2024, more than 22,000 Australian-born citizens left the country and never came back. Not backpackers on a working holiday. People who sold everything they owned, packed their lives into suitcases, and bought a one-way ticket out. It was the highest departure rate since before the pandemic. And when you look closer, the reason isn't some mystery, it's math. And it's shifting fast. Migrant departures have been climbing. And crucially, it's no longer just expiring visa holders going home. It's Australian citizens and long-term residents joining the exodus. From Sydney alone, over 104,000 people left in a single financial year. So what could possibly push people back out through a door the rest of the world is desperate to enter? To understand that, you have to follow the money, and it starts with the single biggest number in any Australian's life: the price of a home. By late 2025, Sydney's median house price hit a record $1.75 million, and to be clear, that doesn't buy you a mansion. That's a basic 3-bedroom house, about an hour from the city centre. This has pushed Sydney to become the second least affordable city on the entire planet, behind only Hong Kong. And it's not just Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide have both cracked the global top 10 for unaffordability. Here's the stat that really lands it. Recent research found it can now take a nurse, a teacher, or a tradesperson more than 50 years to afford a Sydney home. 50 years. On a normal, full-time salary. In other words, for millions of people, the golden door into the country is still open, but the door into a home behind it has been quietly bricked shut. 20 years ago, buying a first home took a few years of saving. Today, it takes closer to a decade, even if you do everything right. Something changed, and understanding what broke is where this story gets interesting. During COVID, banks handed out some of the cheapest loans in history, fixed rates as low as 2%. For the first time in years, young couples genuinely believed they might own a home, so they jumped in. Then those fixed terms expired, and the trap snapped shut. Interest rates didn't rise gently. They jumped. Repayments went from manageable to impossible almost overnight, with no warning and no way out. And this is where Australia's hidden weakness gets exposed. Australian household debt now sits at over 200% of household income, one of the highest levels in the developed world. For comparison, the United States sits at roughly half of that. Sure, your house might have doubled in value on paper, but paper wealth doesn't pay the mortgage. To actually get that money, you'd have to sell and then compete against the same insane prices that trapped you in the first place. So for thousands of families, the escape hatch became obvious. Sell the Sydney house for a fortune, buy something better overseas for far less, and pocket the difference. Walk back out the golden door and take the profit with you. But just as that pressure was peaking, the market did something that flipped the entire story on its head, because after years of only going up, Australian house prices started to fall. And that brings us to the second uncomfortable truth: falling house prices don't actually save anyone. Now, you have to be careful here, because the headlines will lie to you in both directions. Nationally, this is not a 2008-style collapse. Across the whole country, prices are only down a couple of percent. Most forecasters call it flat to slightly negative for the year. But the national average is hiding something dramatic underneath. The pain is concentrated. Sydney and Melbourne are leading a genuine downturn. In fact, Chris Joy, the analyst who literally designed the property indices Australia uses to measure prices, put Sydney's recent decline at around a 12% annualized rate, with Melbourne close behind. To put that in perspective, the biggest fall in national house prices ever recorded was about 11%. Joy thinks this correction could end up being one of the largest in the country's history. Other economists strongly disagree and see a slowdown. Not a crash, nobody actually knows yet. Here's why it doesn't rescue anyone. The people hurt most by falling prices are the ones who just bought, young families with tiny deposits, now watching their debt outweigh their home's value. The reasons people are leaving were never only about house prices. They were about something quieter and far more relentless. Even if you never try to buy a house, Australia has been draining your wallet through everyday costs. And the core problem is simple. Prices went up, but wages didn't keep pace. Real wages, what your pay is actually worth after inflation, have fallen nearly 5% since the pandemic. That's the worst drop in the entire developed world. Only New Zealand did worse. In plain terms, millions of Australians now have less buying power than they did in 2020, while everything essential costs more. The everyday numbers are brutal. Rent in Sydney averages around $720 a week, over $37,000 a year, gone before groceries or bills. Nearly 70% of Australians say they couldn't handle a surprise $3,000 expense. And every single month, roughly 10,000 Australians fall into homelessness, not because they don't work, but because working full-time no longer covers the basics. This isn't poverty at the margins. This is the middle class being quietly suffocated. And yet, if you ask the government, they'd tell you the economy is doing fine. Which brings us to the strangest twist in this entire story. Because on paper, Australia's economy is still growing, GDP keeps ticking up. Politicians point at that number and insist everything is working, so why does everyone feel poorer? This is the third uncomfortable truth, and it's the one the headline numbers are designed to hide. The economy grew, but the population grew faster. So while the total pie got bigger, it was being sliced among far more people. Each individual Australian was actually getting a smaller piece. Economists call this a per capita recession, and Australia has been living in one. Economic output per person fell for 21 consecutive months. Living standards were sliding the entire time the headline numbers looked healthy. The whole growth story, it turns out, was being propped up by one thing: relentless immigration. Something like 500,000 people were being pushed through that golden door into Sydney and Melbourne every year. That kept the headline GDP positive while making the housing shortage and the competition for everything dramatically worse. The growth was masking the rot. And in May 2026, the government finally reached for the one lever everyone said they'd never touch. They came for the tax breaks. Negative gearing on established properties and the capital gains tax discount. Two policies that let investors treat housing as a tax-advantaged financial instrument rather than a place to live. For decades, touching these was considered political suicide. Every party promised never to do it. Then, almost overnight, they did exactly that, and the reaction was immediate. Investors who made up around 42% of all new mortgages largely vanished from the market. The banks noticed instantly, because Australia's big banks aren't really banks in the way you think. They're mortgage businesses. Home loans are the engine of their profits. So when borrowers started sitting on the sidelines, the banks didn't wait for the Reserve Bank. They started cutting their own mortgage rates to lure buyers back. Not out of generosity, but because their own data showed demand falling off a cliff. And if you think all of this is uniquely Australian, that's the final thing worth understanding. Because the exact same thing is happening across the most property-obsessed economies on Earth. Chinese house prices have fallen consistently for years. Canadian cities are down over 20% in places. New Zealand's inflation-adjusted market has dropped by over a third in some major cities. And governments aren't fighting it anymore. In many cases, they're the ones deliberately letting the air out. China tightened developer financing. New Zealand slashed building restrictions. Canada loosened zoning and tightened migration. Australia just became the loudest test case of them all. For 20 years, the assumption was that governments would always step in to stop house prices from falling. That assumption is now being quietly abandoned. And that changes the entire calculation for anyone standing at the door, deciding whether to stay. Which brings us back to the people leaving. Because when a skilled professional runs the numbers, the decision often makes itself. Sell a modest Sydney home for well over $1 million. Earn the same salary in pounds or dollars somewhere with cheaper rent. Actually save money. The math writes the plane ticket. And here's why it matters more than the raw headcount suggests. It's estimated that roughly 0.1% of Australians pay around 60% of all capital gains tax. So it doesn't take millions of people leaving to hurt. If the small group of high earners and business builders walks out that door, the tax base goes with them. The people who leave often employ the people who stay. That's the deeper fear economists keep circling back to. Not just a housing correction, but a slow brain drain, layered on top of falling productivity, rising debt, and a country that spent years papering over its problems with population growth. So, is Australia's luck finally running out? The honest answer is more complicated than any thumbnail. Australia isn't collapsing. It's still wealthy, still one of the most desirable places on the planet. The house price crash is really a sharp correction in two cities, not a nationwide freefall, but something has genuinely broken in the promise. For generations, the deal was simple: walk through the golden door, work hard, save, and you get to build a life here. Today, a nurse needs 50 years to buy a home, and the middle class is going backwards while the economy technically grows. That's why the people leaving aren't failures. Many of them love the place, they just did the arithmetic, and the arithmetic won. The lucky country didn't suddenly run out of luck, it ran out of affordable homes and, so far, the time and will to build them. And that's the thing about a golden door. For 100 years, everyone was fighting to get through it. The real story of the next decade is how many people are quietly turning around and walking back out.